Hey guys, I was just doing like a little bit of research on what constitutes gross negligence, and a few things that were said in the writ of mandamus, basically in response to it by either the Attorney General or Judge Francis Gohl. And then there's a few clips of like law YouTubers because I am a layperson, so feel free to take what you want and leave what you don't want. If you have any corrections for me, I welcome those. So please put those in the comment if you haven't get into it. General Todd Rokita, pursuant to Rule 3F of the Indiana Rules of Procedure for Original Actions, files his response to Allen's verified petition for writ of mandamus and prohibition. In 2017, two teen girls were murdered near the Monon High Bridge Trail in Delphi, Indiana. Richard Allen was charged with the murders on October 28, 2022. On November 14, 2022, Special Judge Francis Gohl appointed Bradley Rozzi and Andrew Baldwin to represent Allen. In October 2023, discovery subject to a protective order was leaked to the public. Judge Gohl set a hearing for October 19th to discuss the upcoming hearing on October 31st and other matters that have recently arisen. At a chambers meeting before the hearing, Judge Gohl informed Baldwin and Rozzi of her concerns regarding the defense team and the totality of the circumstances surrounding their representation of Mr. Allen.
I have grave concerns. This is the judge after these Rozzi and Baldwin want to appear on behalf of Richard Allen for free. And Richard Allen's there in the courtroom. So this is the judge talking to Richard Allen. I have grave concerns, Mr. Allen, about their representation of you, their previous findings by this court of their gross negligence. Mr. Allen, you are entitled to adequate representation in your case. You are entitled to a vigorous defense in your case. And this is difficult, Mr. Allen, because I know what you want. You've indicated that through your attorneys, but I cannot and will not allow these attorneys to represent you with the concerns that I've had with the gross negligence that I have found. They withdrew rather than be found grossly negligent and be removed. I can't do it, sir. I just can't. I cannot allow that. So she does not.
Improper comments to the public. After stating that they would not talk about the case, Baldwin and Rozzi issued a press release that was potentially violative of the ethics rules. Conflict of interest. Rozzi filed a tort claim on Allen's behalf against the DOC. Preserving the right to file a tort claim by meeting statutory deadlines is common practice and doesn't necessarily create a conflict of interest on its own. Attorneys often take steps to protect their clients' potential claims while focusing on the primary legal matter at hand. Attorneys have a duty to diligently protect their clients' interests, which may include preserving the right to pursue additional legal actions beyond the current proceedings. Filing motions with inaccuracies and falsehoods. The pleadings regarding safekeeping Allen and the DOC contained proven false information. Protective order violation. Baldwin was the source of more leaked discovery, which spawned a criminal investigation and may have resulted in a suicide. Judge Gohl found that Baldwin and Rozzi had demonstrated gross negligence and incompetence in representing Allen.
Talk about what happened. Now, again, like I said, the fact that they preserved his right to have a civil case filed against the corrections and against the prison is, to me, I don't see any problem with that in the slightest. Now, the fact that you sent an email to the wrong Brad, and the fact that you allowed this person, this former employee of yours, to come into your office and now snoop around and take some pictures of that, does that constitute gross negligence? So gross negligence essentially has the same definition or similar definitions in almost all jurisdictions, but I did pull the one from Indiana, and this is what I found the definition of gross negligence to be in Indiana. Gross negligence is generally defined as a conscious, voluntary act or omission in reckless disregard of the consequences to another party. That's what gross negligence is. What's negligence? Negligence is basically not acting in due care. You have to act with due care how normal people would act for the safety of yourself and others. That's, if you don't act with normal, the way you normally would act for the safety of others, that's negligence. Gross negligence is a conscious, voluntary act, reckless disregard of the consequences. Was this reckless disregard? Did you go to the public library to prepare this case and leave all these pictures over of the public library? That would be gross negligence. Did you open up a sign by your office saying anybody who wants can come in today and take a free drink and snacks, and over the snacks table you left over these pictures of the Delphi? That would be gross negligence. What happened here, the fact that a former employee came into the office and you weren't careful enough to make sure that that door was locked so the former employee can't do something and take some pictures and disseminate it, that does not rise, in my opinion. That does not rise at all to gross negligence. Perhaps it's a case for negligence, perhaps, and I'm not 100% certain that it is, but you can make a case that maybe it's negligence. But gross negligence, incompetence, I personally don't buy it. I don't think that that's...
The legal dictionary, standard of care. The term standard of care refers to the reasonable degree of care a person should provide to another person, typically in a professional or medical setting. For example, standard of care in the case of a cancer patient could include a recommendation of chemotherapy or surgery. If the doctor does not treat the patient to the best of his ability, then a court could find him negligent and guilty of malpractice for failing to provide an adequate standard of care. To explore this concept, consider the following standard of care definition: attention and care a person should reasonably provide to another person under the circumstances. What is standard of care? The term standard of care refers to the level of attentiveness and care that a certain person owes to another person under the circumstances. This generally refers to professionals such as doctors, paramedics, lawyers, and others. For example, standard of care when referring to an attorney means that the attorney should provide his client with an adequate amount of time and attention devoted specifically to that client's case. If instead the attorney pays more attention to the client with the most money, then he may neglect his other clients' cases and miss something important. Professional standard of care. A professional standard of care applies to anyone in a professional role offering services to a client, patient, or customer. Typically, when discussing a professional standard of care, the two roles this most applies to are attorneys and doctors. These two professions govern themselves by a professional standard of care that, if violated, can subject them to lawsuits for malpractice. Attorney standard. An attorney standard refers to the idea that any reasonable attorney who has the same knowledge and skill as any other attorney in a similar practice should take care in how he dispenses his advice and practices. The attorney standard holds that an attorney should not suffer punishment for making a simple error in judgment, so long as he believed that he was, in good faith, offering the proper advice and acting to help his client. So I think most people would agree that these two attorneys were representing Richard Allen with basically all that they have. You know that they committed a lot of time and effort into his defense. Whether you agree with what they said, they were definitely bringing it. Like, they were doing their best to represent him to the best of their ability. I don't think that that is questionable, really. I think everybody would agree on that. You can comment below if that's an incorrect assumption. And then for taking reasonable steps that other people in their same position would take, I've heard many law YouTubers comment on this case and say having a war room is totally a normal thing. You have your setup, you're not going to be putting those files away every day. And so it's like already in a place that's not readily accessible to people, and it's reasonable to have that. Because in any office, you're going to have a group of people that are going to have access to the office. Not just the people that work there, but like the nighttime cleaning crew or delivery people, or I worked in a doctor's office, so we had like drug reps and stuff like that that do have access to patient files. If they were to do that, it's obviously something that's probably in their contract not to do. But with somebody coming in and stealing like your files, which he's been charged with stealing from them. And so to say that if somebody comes in and steals something, that's you being negligent, I don't necessarily think that
Examples of standard of care mistakes. Unfortunately, failure to meet the standard of care examples are rather common, especially in the medical field. While some of these standard of care examples of mistakes occur in doctor's office, many can occur in the operating room as well, and in some cases, if the doctor is negligent in, say, prescribing the right medication or ordering timely surgery, the patient may suffer worse effects from his condition or even die.
So an example of standard of care coming up against the Supreme Court was there was a patient who went to her doctor's and she was complaining of eye issues, and they would normally, like if you're over 40, to test for glaucoma, they would run this simple eye test, but since she was under 40, they did not run that test, even though that like their standard of care is over 40 to run that test. And so a couple years later, that patient went in to get another opinion at another doctor, and they tested her for glaucoma, and she did have glaucoma. And so she sued the other doctors for like the irreparable damage that like she could have caught it way earlier and prevented a lot of the damage that was done. And so she actually lost the case in 2 courts and took it to the Supreme Court, where she won. And they said that although the standard of care is like 40 and over, it was their responsibility, since she came in there complaining specifically of eye problems. And since the test is so easy to run, and since it created irreparable damage, that they were in fact negligent by not applying that simple test, and that the standard of care kind of like needed to change.
Irrespective of its disregard by the standards of ophthalmology profession, it is the duty of the courts to say what is required to protect patients under 40 from damaging results of glaucoma. We therefore hold, as a matter of law, that the reasonable standard that should have been followed under the undisputed facts of this case was the timely giving of this simple, harmless pressure test to this patient, and that, in failing to do so, the defendants were negligent, which proximately resulted in the blindness sustained by the plaintiff, for which the defendants are liable.
So on this one, I'm a little bit up in the air about Baldwin accidentally emailing the discovery map or whatever it was to Brandon Woodhouse, because I think just it's a technical mistake and it happens. And so in the doctor's case, they actually like made the choice. It was like a conscious decision to not give that patient the test. And I don't think that this was a conscious decision. So I don't really think that you could say that rises to gross negligence. But as far as negligence, I think you could make a case, because he should have double checked the address or the email address of who he was sending it to. And so that's like the only part I really feel like there was negligence on, and especially after he found out. I don't know when he found out. They never said that. And since there was no like disqualification hearing or anything, we don't know like what his defense to that would be. Like maybe he didn't even know that he sent it to the wrong person until they went and raided that guy's house or whatever. And so that one I'm a little bit up in the air, but I don't think it rises to the level of being thrown off the case. But if there was a problem with that, and because that was a while ago, so as far as like the press release that they released and this earlier leak, which they couldn't even have that much discovery at that point anyways, because it took them like a long time to give them the discovery. So I'm not really sure about that one, but the judge should have brought those things up, or Nick McClellan should have brought those things up earlier, and she should have like sanctioned them for that. So she would have been building like that record of if they are incompetent or grossly negligent, like there should be instances where they've been doing it that she's actually like addressed it, in my opinion, instead of like being like the girlfriend that when you get in a fight brings up things from like 2 years ago and just has like this whole pile of things that they've been like saving up to like, and they just dump it all on you at once. I don't know if anybody's had that happen in an argument, but
I heard that, I was like, that's sad.
Caitlin Becker, this case has taken so long to get to where we are now. And now for the families of the victims, they're going to have to wait longer. Richard Allen says he didn't do it. He's going to have to wait longer. This is really an unexpected twist and turn at this junction of this case that goes back to 2017. Your thoughts tonight?
You know, Vinny, I have to wonder what the ultimate purpose was for leaking the images. I just don't know what the goal was, because it doesn't seem that it has helped anybody, any party at all, particularly not the defense. And if these images were leaked from the defense team, as you said, they said in court, and as of course you guys said, because you two got the images originally, to what end? I mean, if you're working for the defense, this seems to sort of hamstring them from properly defending their client. And now we have this major setback. I'm just so curious as to where they thought this was going to go and why they thought to do it. I mean, people leak stuff to us all of the time. They leak images that they shouldn't leak. They leak documents that they shouldn't leak. But there's usually a purpose to it. It's to get out information that wasn't previously out there. It is to sort of hold feet to the fire that, you know, aren't being held to the fire in a place of authority. But I just don't see the reason that this was done.
I just want to go back to Anya on that. Anya, any indication from your investigation as to why the person who grabbed those images and disseminated them, why they did it? Were they selling them? Was there some, like, do we know?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And it's unfortunate because in this situation, we don't really have an answer about an ultimate motive. We can say in the communications that we saw between people who are not the original leaker, but who kind of got it down the line is there seems to be some sort of sense that, you know, it's kind of a combination of morbid curiosity, but also like, we need to put out this because, you know, it could prove the defense's theory is more credible with the Odinism. And, you know, here's how the crime scene looked. So,
So it's been said that Murder Sheet actually has more pictures than most people out there have, like somewhere around 8 pictures, I guess. So that's interesting to me. Like, do the photos show what the defense is asserting to be more true? Like, that's kind of what I'm hearing them say. And then I also think it's very interesting that they've never released these text messages that they were privy to.
I don't think that this was coming from the defense attorneys. We've seen no evidence of that whatsoever. But I think it was a situation where you had people just put stuff out there that they shouldn't have, and then it just spirals out of control because as we all know, one person leaks to one person, and then that person leaks to 2, and unfortunately we've seen that where this is just kind of spread like a wildfire across the internet, and we're just dreading that these images, some of the graphic images, might come out and be published, and we're just really praying that that does not happen.
The Murder Sheet really just irritates me because she says, oh, we in no way see any signs that the defense, like, played a part in it. But also, every time she talks, she does kind of imply that the defense had a part in it. Just like when she said that the pictures were released possibly because the defense wanted to prove what they were saying in the memorandum. The way I see it is the people who got it were not, like, pro-defense team. And so for her to insinuate that those people are the ones that are releasing it is a little bit disingenuous to me because if you look at it, it seems to be more people who disagree with the defense team. And so who did it benefit? Not the defense team, and all these people that were so appalled that they were released and yet were drawing pictures, and still to this day when they talk about it, it's almost like a superiority that they've seen them or something. I don't know. Like, if you disagree that they're out there, then you shouldn't have looked at them. And if you're so concerned that they're going to get out there, Murder Sheet, why don't you shut the freak up? Sorry. They sometimes have good information, but they're just so think they're better than everyone. It's really hard for me to listen to them at any point, but I'm going to suck that back in and let's continue on.
Bob Motta, let me ask you about, let's start with Richard Allen, right? every defendant has the right to their counsel of choice. Now, this is appointed counsel in this case, but my guess is with them filing all this stuff, being very aggressive, very committed to the case, that maybe they are the attorneys that he wanted. But they want it out, but they don't get out unless the judge lets them out. How does all this affect the defendant and the defendant's rights?
It's huge, and actually, Kevin and Anya, we were talking about that before when we were kind of pontificating what we thought might happen in there. And what stunned me, not so much that Baldwin ended up withdrawing, because I think he was under a lot of heat. When we walked into that courtroom at about 1 o'clock and it was empty, and then I don't know if it was about 1:50, and about 8 law enforcement officers from Doug Carter to Tony Liggett walked in there, and they all sat in the jury box. At that point, you knew one of two things was going on. Either the judge was going to try to have some kind of hearing to make a preliminary finding for a Franks hearing, or that she was going to proceed in terms of a removal hearing. So they were back in chambers for 2 hours, and we all saw Baldwin come in, and he was back there. Rosie was back there. McClellan was back there, and they really had this out back in chambers for hours. We waited for an extra half an hour before it was supposed to start. In the meantime, I'm sitting directly behind Richard Allen's wife and mother, who are weeping. So they knew something was going on, and then people kept coming to talk to them, and Kathy was just crying the entire time. That's Richard Allen's wife. From the minute she got into that courtroom, and from the minute that Rosie pulled her out 5 minutes before the judge came in. As far as Richard's Sixth Amendment right, it's devastating. Because these guys were appointed, but they're private counsel, and you could tell by the depth of which, agree with it or not, but those memos that they put out, there was a ton of work that was put into those. That is not your typical public defender type filing, just because of lack of time, because they have a huge amount of cases to work on. These guys were fighting to the death for this guy. So I have every feeling that Richard Allen is sitting there devastated, as well as his family.
All right.
My favorite provision from the Indian Constitution is proudly displayed right around that corner. Article 1, Section 12. All courts shall be open, and every person for injury done to his person, property, or reputation shall have remedy by due course of law. Justice shall be administered freely and without purchase, completely without denial, and speedily without delay. So this brings us to the Supreme Court today. In my almost 2 years on this court, and 30 years.
Okay, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this video made sense. I was having a hard time getting it out there, so I'm just putting it out. I really appreciate anyone who watches and comments and all that good stuff. So thank you for stopping by, and see you next time. Bye!